Welcome to Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed. I am Juliette Hahn. I'm here with my co-host, Brent Sopel, and we are here to change the narrative. We want to educate, but we also want you guys to understand what it is like to be dyslexic and how things can change. So join us every week for Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed. Welcome back to Word Blindness. I am Juliette Hahn here with my co-host, Brent Sopel. How are you?
Another day in paradise. You know my line.
So I know your line. I know. I was like, oh, was he going to do it or is he not? So yeah, I love the consistency.
That's what I'm all about.
Yes, you are. So today we're going to talk about two different things, but one of the things that I kind of want to touch on is we've had people ask us, like, how do you get your topics? And we started really with our own story and our own kids and really our, what we went through in life. But as we both have gotten older, I mean, you with the foundation, me just, being on the podcast talking about dyslexia, we have people ask us questions or share their story. And sometimes when people share their story, it brings something up in us that we're like, oh my gosh, we haven't talked about that. So today is a perfect example of that. And I have a situation that happened on the lacrosse field with a parent, and it really, it hurt my heart. But then I was like, this is something that needs to be talked about. And then you had something with one of the hockey players, which was really cool because it also then brought me thinking about stuff. So do you want to start with your story or should I start with mine?
No, because I have no idea. I don't remember what my story was.
Your story was about the brothers and the kid on the team, how like board games and all those different things.
Oh, yes, another one. I got too many stories.
I know you do. So do you want to start or do you want me to go now that I just...
Again, it's, I'm always working with families. It's the parents going in depth, because you need to change anything, you need to understand it, to grow, you got to be able to understand it. And that's what I always say, from the education system, everybody's like, we got to change it. Well, we got to educate everybody before we can change it. In this family that I work with in Denver, and, their kid is 7 right now. They're, in the lake house running around. His brother, him and I were playing Uno, and his brother started talking shit, as brothers do. And, I'm better than you, or so, obviously that's what brothers do, but, he believed it because that's been a narrative for a long time. He went later on in the day, he was helping grandma clean up, doing a great job. And grandma went to praise him, said, see, praise him as in a kind of joke, saying, listen, see, you're going to make a great waiter. Well, he took that as I'm dumb, and, a couple more things, happened in the day, and it was just a complete, train wreck, Mom said. And it's, again, I talk about self-esteem every day. That's the most important topic for me is that self-esteem, is because we start struggling, from that first book, normal kids lost Uno, you're yelling at each other, you're fighting each other, but you don't let that emotionally affect you. Grandma saying, basically you're going to be a waiter as a joke because you're doing a great job. We don't, they don't take that in as though we're stupid. We've been struggling for so long. I always say we struggle longest, hardest, and deeper than anybody. When we grab that book, that's when we do start struggling. And, I still wake up every day thinking I'm stupid. And people are like, don't. Well, it's been 30 some years. I was 32 before I found out. So it was 30 some years before I found out. I just thought I was. So that's the narrative that's in my brain, but it's, people take for granted what reading is. And how many times a day you got to do it, and how many times you got to struggle to taking a business card, to taking it to an email, to, 2 pieces of paper. You can't do that. Like, just the simplest things to you guys are the hardest things ever. And, like, for example, you can't, if you got, two kids, one dyslexic, and there's always the other one smart, brilliant. You can't discuss scores, test scores, or grades, because it's always a competition between siblings. But then you've got, obviously dyslexics going to struggle, and you've got to separate that. He can't hear that. He already hates waking up and going to somewhere where he's miserable or she's miserable for 48 hours. So it's that self-esteem, that understanding, but and you'll get to that point and this mom's like, what do I do? She went to a therapist trying to figure out that self-talk issue, and it didn't work out. So people, if you want to do that for your kid, great. You got no problem at all. But that person has to be dyslexic. And I say this all the time. If you're going to counselor or therapist, those major traumas, that person has a need to go through them too. Don't counsel out of book 122 or 123. So this kid left. It wasn't doing well. And then, so I sat and, had a conversation with mom, and for an example is I said, the boys can't play cards together. She's like, why? I'm like, because it's always going to end up in a brawl. That's what, you got to be there to monitor it. So it's like, oh, I beat you or whatever, no problem. But the jabs that brothers do or sisters do, that hurts longer and deeper in different ways. And so I'm like, you got to be there. Grandma can be there, monitor it, but somebody's got to be there to monitor, make sure it is fun and it doesn't go down the wrong path. And she's like, wow, never thought of it. But those little things right there add up, good and bad, very, very quickly, in the dyslexic world.
They do. And I love that story for so many reasons, because obviously I have, 3 kids, to the 2 boys, and they are always in competition. They're also very positive of each other. And I think we talked about this because I was like, we have done games, but I do remember we just family adjusted, right? So there is, someone could say, well, siblings help you get ready for the real world, right? They're the most harshest, they can be there, but there is such a fine line when you're talking about, when someone is dyslexic or struggling, because it is like, okay, they are already putting that self pressure on them because they're hearing it in different places, ADHD, dyslexia, you're hearing it from teachers and you're hearing it from parents. And a lot of times, even if a parent, I shared this with you, before Montgomery was diagnosed, we were sitting at the table doing 2nd grade homework. I was cooking. The dogs were running around. The 2 youngers were running around. And I was like, just focus. Why can't you focus now? I can't focus. I wasn't focusing, but I didn't think about it. And if those are the little jabs that someone takes, and they can take that personally. I obviously wasn't doing it to hurt, but there are those sometimes when you don't think about the little things that when you're dyslexic, you internalize, and something that you don't think is going to be a negative because you're trying to be positive. Sometimes someone with dyslexia or other learning styles is going to take it because they're already feeling a little less than, and they could have, we've also talked about this, even though I have my scars and stuff, we talk about the innate confidence. I was born with innate confidence. Sometimes, as my parents would say, I was a little too confident. It was like, just stop it. But I still had those dings. And I remember being like, and even as an adult, there are certain situations where I'll get in where I'm like, I don't feel as smart as someone else. And it still stings. And it all stems from, being in the classroom and having to struggle. And we talk about this. So, for me to get an email, and my, current job, as I'm doing emails, I'm reading stuff, I'm writing stuff, and it takes longer and your brain gets so tired. But there's times where it's so frustrating when the words that you want to say and you cannot spell them and you can't even put them into, you can't even speak them because you're thinking you're saying them right, but it's not even picking up. And it's like, I just want that word. And it is frustrating. So think about, as an adult, think about a kid that is having the same thing. Cause there could be kids, that have a stronger vocabulary. Maybe some don't, but when you have a strong vocabulary and you can't spell, I mean, I cannot spell. It is like, I spell probably like a kindergartner, and it is what it is. But there's times where it's really frustrating when I'm trying to get an email across. I can speak it all day. I mean, give me something to speak about. I can speak about it all day, but when it has to go on paper. And so many times when I talk to people about it, they're like, wow, I never thought of that. Or taking, you're copying something. I can't tell you how many times I'm going to copy, doing something on my phone, and I'm like, going to a different screen and I forget it. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I should just write it down. It's like, silly that I just don't write it down, but maybe I don't have a pen and I literally will do it 4 times. But then I can remember things I can remember, I mean, there's situations I have like a crazy, if someone tells me a situation and I analyze it and get it, comprehend it, I can literally probably speak it verbatim what they said. So I can really do that. But then when it comes down to the pen and paper, so, I think it's so important.
You and I talk about this all the time, we're talking about being positive, on the negative one. And it's been okay in your house for, 40 years, a newly dyslexic, it's not okay because they don't understand. And the quicker that that's why, I always talk about that, these little things, these pain, how, you got to tell dyslexia did a great job, for a reason. The quicker we can learn, we have strengths and weaknesses, then we all can excel. Or I'm not, this, but that's the hardest thing.
It's so true.
That's the hardest thing is to get there. Now, I can't do this. I focus on that. I can't do this. Not that, I've got these strengths, because you lose all those strengths. You don't even see them. You were talking about this. Why weren't the teachers, focusing on Montgomery's strengths? Well, they didn't see them. He didn't see them. You didn't see it, right? And that's strengths and weaknesses, but we can't get there till we get that self-esteem, and we have to understand what that self-esteem is. So it's, it's a vicious cycle. But that's why I take the approach that I do. And it's obviously very different than anybody else, for those reasons. It's those little things add up quickly, negatively and positively.
They do. And it brings me to, like, when you're talking about the school, like we've talked about, it makes me so frustrated. Every IAP meeting, I would give the scenario, and I'm sure you guys have heard my scenario before, but like, if you have a high jumper that is literally going to the Olympics, he's the best high jumper, but he is not swift. He's not fast. He is not quick. Would you take him off the track and make him sprint, or would you have him practice the high jump more? You would have him practice the high jump more. Yes, you can put in the sprinting, but you are not going to just take him away from the high jump and constantly just do the sprinting, because that's a strength and weakness. And they do that in school. And it was so many times. And I remember just seeing a teacher be like, oh, but again, education is to try to strengthen the weakness. But it is like when you're sitting there telling someone and constantly being like, you're not good at this. You need to get better. You need to get better. You need to get better. And they're not focusing on the things that the kid is actually really good at. It then starts dinging at that kid and making the parents pissed.
And then, the problem to that is why I talk is they don't even understand what you're saying right now.
Oh, totally.
Right. So
I'm the crazy mom.
And understanding of what it is. You're absolutely right. With that scenario, a million times, but they don't even understand what you just said. Right. Mm-hmm. They don't see it. Their brains don't work that way. So, obviously our brains are developed and born, there's a reason why negative news passes, faster. But a lot of times those strengths aren't visible because they're not used.
Mm-hmm. And right, they're not harnessed. Yeah, you have to figure those out. But the other thing is that I think is really important is thinking also about each kid's personality. And I'm big on this, where there's certain kids that are really hard on themselves, perfectionists. And whether you believe in, astrology, where it's their sign, whether it's like their birth order, whatever it is, some people are a little bit more type A, then some people are a little bit laid back. And that is sometimes it's actually a positive. Like I'm not a type of A, like I need to be a perfectionist. I'd be like, I did a fine job and I would be fine. There's someone else that would have my learning disabilities that if they were a perfectionist, it would have ruined them because I couldn't be a perfectionist. Like I couldn't do what needed to be a perfectionist about. So no. And then none. But like those people that put that pressure on themselves, if you then couple of it with a learning disability, that is going to be even more harsh for that individual. So you have to think about your kid and their personality as well.
Correct. 100%. And to branch off that is, I was saying this the other day is, the world is, as messed up as it's ever been. And the adults are the most messed up ones.
Totally.
And they're not even understanding what they can't see their own stuff. They have, they're not able to do that. And that's falling down upon the kids. And, you're wondering why the kids are the way they are. And, I can't remember somebody, committed suicide. Like, oh, there's no science. Oh, there's science. But it's, back to that point is they don't see it. They don't understand what that all entails is entails of the strengths, of the weaknesses, harness it, but harness what? I mean, that's the right question because they don't see it. They don't understand it. So, it's a bigger in depth conversation, but that's why, again, go back to why I'm always talking this way. There's a reason why.
And it's important because you'll have another group that's like, well, I don't want to focus on the weaknesses because they make me feel less than, or they do this. I think it's so important to not focus, but be acknowledge and know your weaknesses. Because if you don't know your weaknesses, you're not going to get to that next level in life, period. I can say, I suck at spelling, and someone can say, oh, don't be so hard on yourself. No, I'm not being hard on myself. I literally suck at spelling.
That's everybody, take your participation ribbon and go shove it up your ass. We all have strengths and weaknesses. We all have a stronger side, a weaker side. That's life.
That's life.
When I'm coaching kids, hey guys, we're going to work on that. So we're, you got your right side, for example, is always strong. We're only going to turn that way. No. Okay, great. So how does that benefit you, as a person growing? Everybody has to work on both sides, and
100%.
That's same thing as struggling emails or reading and writing. Awful, sucks. But now I can obviously I know I've got other strengths. So there's that balance, there's that understanding. And that's you got to explore it, and you got to take more from your losses and your wins.
Totally. And this is where, again, that goes back to the self-esteem, because if you have zero self-esteem, you're not going to even see your positive, and you're not going to go off on your positive. See, I know you love what I'm saying. You're not going to go off on what your positive is. And that is one of the things in my family growing up, we were very good at. Okay, you might suck at this, but you're really good at that. And so, and that's what we do even in our family today. And so it is like, what? I know what my weaknesses are, and I have some pretty big weaknesses, but I also know what my strengths are. And I have some pretty big strengths that I'm happy to shout from the rooftops, because I'm also a whole person that, is every day staying curious, learning and doing all these things. Even though I know there's times where I could fail, it's okay because I failed so many times in life. But I can acknowledge that, I can learn from that, and then I can kind of go off, okay, let's see where my strength is going to come in here, and let's see where I need the support to help me with the part that I'm not strong.
Well, that's what, mommy did that for you, right?
Yes.
Mommy made it okay for you, from day one, right? And that's how, that's all you guys know in that house, right? Is that conversation. Now you get dyslexia just diagnosed, coming in, parents are crying, what we're doing, house is flipped upside down, what the fuck, they don't know where to go, right? So, and you don't figure it out in a day or two. So your mom laid that foundation for your household, to be able to understand what the strengths are and weaknesses are. You still have scars, like you said, but that was built in early because she knew what it was and applied that. And that's, that's kind of the basis that I talk about. The quicker that we can understand it, and that's why, talk about it, then we can, grow it. Then you can use that strengths and weaknesses and understand it. But if you don't understand that, again, you only focus on the negative. I can't do this because it's not like, this, I can't, I don't have the fine motor skills to do this. It's, reading.
Right.
You've got to do it everywhere.
Right. And the thing is also interesting that you bring up, because it is being a parent, right? And having all different kids that have strengths and weaknesses, learning disabilities, non-learning disabilities, very gifted in school, maybe not as gifted as they say, like socially as maybe the one that's dyslexic, all these different things. But as a parent, when you're raising kids, even though I know I'm a good parent, but there was times and I think I shared this on another episode. I remember one of my kids coming to me and being like, I want to be dyslexic because you say that those are the best kind of people and they're not boring and all these different things. And I literally was like, I threw up in my mouth a little and I was like, oh, fuck. All right, honey. Yes. Okay. And then I was like, shit. Okay. This one is taking all the positive reinforcement I'm doing for the other one and internalizing it. And I'm going to now cause a problem here. So I need to very quickly adjust and really adjust in the conversation. And we were able to have a really good, this is when they were little. So, but we were able to have a good conversation, but then it made me think. So again, being a parent, we're not perfect. And we're all fucking up our kids in some sense, right? Even though we could be the best parent, we can have the great environment. We're doing things the best to our knowledge, but this is why we're having these conversations. Because if we can give someone a little tool to be like, I heard this on a podcast. Oh my gosh, I never thought of that because I just never was in this situation. That's what our goal is. That's having these conversations. And as you said, educating and changing, even if it's one person at a time, just to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to change this. A teacher listening to this being like, okay, you know what, when Johnny's doing this, I need to change the way I approach Johnny. I mean, how many times in the classroom would I have a teacher just say to me, if you just focused and worked as hard as you did on the athletic field, you would be fine. And it literally pierced my heart. And it literally would kick me in the gut. I would go down and then I would have to pick myself up and be like, okay. And every time, some were a little nicer about it. Some were a little harsher, but I got it every time. Like, if you just weren't so social, or if you just weren't so this, you could be better at school. And it was like, no, I actually can't. And fuck yourself. But I obviously didn't do that. It's hard.
I had a woman I talked to. She's like, my boyfriend, he's dyslexic. He was put in the special ed classes, growing up. I tell him he's smart all the time. I'm like, don't do that. Right. Don't do that. I'm like, because we were told we're dumb. Now the opposite of dumb, smart. Don't, do us a disservice, give us a half, it's a slap in the face. Way I take it is a complete slap in the face. She goes, again, she's not dyslexic. I said, how about saying, well, I don't remember what his name was, John, how'd you get to that? That's brilliant. Oh, you need to take that different approach, because we heard we're dumb and smart, same thing. It all washes together. How'd you get to that? It's really cool. That's great. Awesome.
Make it more specific. Mm-hmm.
Make it more specific. And again, what we do, the side door, awesome. I couldn't have got it done without you, but I love how you got there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying you're smart without using those words.
Right. And again, this is where it is so hard, and no one can do it perfectly at all. But sometimes when you're encouraging or trying to encourage and you're using terms, and this goes for anyone that's not even dyslexic, right? But I mean, this is like just anything. You don't know sometimes when you're trying to encourage or motivate, right? Motivate someone, and the words that you're using, someone can think about this as they're like the worst. And I'm going to give you an example, and it has nothing to do with dyslexia, but my mom and I always super, super close. Love my mom. Again, I was an innate confident person. When I had my first child, I had a terrible delivery. And I couldn't do anything. I had an emergency cesarean. I was laid out. I was pissed at my body because I was like, okay, I'm healthy. I'm in fit. What the hell is this? And my mom came in, swooped in, and started doing everything for me. And I remember I was like, she thinks I'm a bad mom. Now,
Yeah.
it was so weird because I'd never thought I would have those feelings, but she and I then started arguing and she's like, what? I'm just trying to help. And finally I was able to verbalize and she's like, well, why would I think you're a bad mother? I think you're amazing. And first of all, this is so weird for you to be saying something like this. I was like, well, first of all, I think it's hormones and it sucks. But I felt because of her just swooping in and helping and doing it, that she didn't think I knew how to do it. And that's the very similar to when someone is dyslexic, dysgraphic, whatever it is, you think you're helping, but sometimes it's making the person feel less than.
And I always talk about having fun. If it's military, they're not having fun. Well, the success rate is a heck of a lot lower. I've learned,
Totally.
Turn it to fun, and it's amazing that the things that that you can do. And that's the biggest thing for me is they don't even know that I take the side door, have fun with them, blah blah blah, and they do it.
And you're talking about the ice when you're
you're talking about the ice or whatever that turn a math problem into cartoon, right? Whatever, just
or
flip
songs
it into pigs
or something,
or songs or whatever. Again, it takes the sting off of of that pressure. And also, the other one that I talk about is, it's funny you say that, is if I tell you, say you're ugly, what have I done? I've said words. You've attached the feelings to words,
right? And that's so important.
So you're the one that's attaching those feelings to to those words. So it's it's that confidence, it's self-esteem to be able to and flip that. Not take that as a as a negative, turn it into whatever, because those are just words. You're attaching those feelings. And the one that the other one that comes up a lot, I thought, assumption's death.
Right.
Oh, I assumed. I thought you thought, oh, now look where you went, what rabbit hole you went down, because you assumed.
And that's relationships. That's everything. That's life. You never should assume.
Yeah.
Ever.
Never. I say assumptions of death. Like, I'm on the ice coaching the kids. I'm like, guys, sorry, I failed every class. They're naming off science. I'm like, no, it's mind reading. I'm like, you need something. If you want the puck, go get it. Call for it. You can't do this as this. Same thing. Relationships. Oh, I think no. I assume no. Yeah. You don't know.
You have to ask and communicate.
You have no idea what's in my brain. You don't want to be in there. You'd be dead. You would jump. So then just it's say it, and that's what we don't do a lot of. We're not very good at that communication. It's you need something. I'll tell you. I don't kind of beat around the bush. I'm like, all right, it's this way here. But too many people, I think he doesn't like, what do you mean? You think? You don't know.
You don't know because you can't read. But that's so many. I mean, that's like life and everything. You have to. And I read something, and it was because I always talk about communications. I mean, my kids are always like, oh, I'm like, you have to communicate. People can't read your mind. You can't do it. And it's so important as you even get older and get into relationships, but even in the workplace, like all these different things. If you are like, oh, I'm just assuming this person's doing this. No, you need to ask them. And it's not rude to ask, especially because it's usually with like a coach or a teacher or whatever. I'll say to my kids, no, you need to ask. And maybe it's uncomfortable, but it's uncomfortable for 2 minutes. But when you're assuming and then it's going through your head and that's like the worst thing. So you need to ask. But, I had my thought. Now I just lost it. Damn it. Oh, it
hockey,
was so
good. Guys will put tap their stick on the ice.
Oh, I know.
For the puck. I'm like, what are you ordering? A Big Mac? You want a fillet of fish? What the hell are you ordering? What are you doing?
Yeah, you might have a tick.
Want the puck. I'm like, how do I know? You want a pizza?
Yeah.
You calling your goat? Like, what is that? So I make the kids use it, so we play the name game. My name is Brent. That's how we started communicate. And it's, yes, for sports, but it is for, for life.
For life. And so here's, and I now remember. So I read something and it was about, because I always say communication is so important. It's key. It's like what really is one of the best things that you can do and give your kids and do for yourself. And this quote said, and I was like, that's so interesting. So you can communicate all day. If the person on the other side is not comprehending it, it doesn't matter what you're saying. So it is so important. I love when you get those smirks because I know a bunch of things, but that's what is like, okay. And we talk about this. Sometimes when we speak, someone looks at us like we have 10 heads. And sometimes for dyslexic, it's like, well, you don't understand. This is how I see it. How are you not understanding? This is how I'm communicating. And sometimes that can be frustrating. This again goes to relationships where someone's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So it is important to get into that dialogue. So even if you're communicating, you want to have dialogue, you want to have communication back, and the comprehension part is so important. To go
a little bit further than that is, everybody talks about their love languages, touch and gift and appreciate whatever the hell those things are. But a lot of people don't know how they learn. Mm-hmm. Are you audio? Are you visual? So, to have that dialogue, but a lot of people that don't even know what they are. Mm-hmm. To build that, I talk about this, all the time. The Y program is, teaching the coaches how to communicate, with kids with learning disorders. Okay, you got to do this. So many of them have no idea how they learn or why. So it's again going back to understanding yourself and what you need.
And what you need. And again, this is so hard for like a little kid, but how many times, and I know, again, I'm going to get like a good reaction. How many times were you like in a classroom or somewhere and someone explains and they're like, do you understand? And you're like,
oh, Sam drove 10 miles. I have no idea where the hell Sam is.
Right. But you say yes, because you're like, I don't even feel like going deep into it because that's going to and especially in the classroom. So think about the kids that are like, yeah, I get it. I mean, we are kings and queens of kind of being like, yep, we got it. And then going on and being like, no idea, but not asking. And because you're embarrassed, you don't want the teacher to have explained it again. Cause you're like, what if I don't understand? Like, this is like completely foreign to me. Yeah. So again, those are the kind of things that are really important as you grow as a person to kind of sometimes just be like, you know what? I got to bite it. I got to bite the bullet and I got to ask if you're not comfortable asking the teacher, find someone that can teach you if it's important to you, if it's something that you're like, I do want to know, because the more that you just push those things, the more self-esteem is going to get affected as well. I personally think.
No, I agree. And, it's funny you say that because we get taught, again, such an early time, first time grabbing that book immediately, when we're struggling, right? It's, so a lot of times we're saying yes without even knowing it.
Oh yeah.
It's just coming out, so there's been many times where I've had to almost gag myself, because we say it so quickly, so naturally, because we have zero clue 95% of the time what was said, what was done, where we're at, what to do. So we're just going to say, yeah,
we're going to deflect. Yeah, deflect. And it is, though, again, I mean, this is where, you were laughing at me, and then we're going to go back to the questions. So this is one of the reasons why I ask a lot of questions, because
it's never ending.
Because I love questions, but it is also the way I learn. I know personally that is the way I learn. So like if I ask you a question and you start talking about something, it's going to bring something up. It's going to make me think. And sometimes that's where like in business is actually a gift of mine. No, it's not just a woman. It's not just a woman. Because I know, first of all, we've talked about you questions. Totally ask. Yes, you do.
I'll ask one or two. You'll ask like 45. I only need one or two. I don't need 45.
Yeah, but you still get into the dialogue. And sometimes you think you're not asking a question, but the conversation is still question-ish. And it's still curious.
Sure. Is that kind of how much you spend? That's 30% off. I didn't ask you how much was off. I asked you how much you spend. Okay. That's the same thing, right?
That is actually, I like that. That's funny. But it is, but again, I know that's how I learn. So I know having those conversations and asking certain questions in certain environments is just going to then bring me to the next level. But when you're a child,
that's understanding, how you learn. And that's what the whole, this whole thing
and
was.
It's taken me for a long time, right? I mean, it was really in college when all of a sudden I was like, oh, wait, okay. Yeah. High school was a shit show. I mean, it was like, I didn't get it at all. So again, but that's where it brings back to the whole self-esteem and really being comfortable in your own skin and those kind of things as parents. If we can help our children, if you're listening to this, you're first, early diagnosed, it's the work that you have to do there by looking inward. And again, it's not comfortable, but
again, that's why, I talk differently than any other. I don't care about reading. I don't care about writing. If you don't have self-esteem, I don't care if you're 55, 50, 66, you've got nothing. Everything. The self-esteem is every single thing in life. And that's why I focus on that. And that's why it's, when you tell your kids you did, dyslexic, you did a great, great, great job, doing homework at night and he or she's struggling, fucking close it. Who gives it? That self-esteem is more important. That's why, it's such a focus of mine. Because most people don't see it. They don't understand it. And that's, you cannot function. You can't learn at your job if you're not having fun. You can't succeed if you're not having fun. So how do we expect a second grader or a third grader to succeed when they're not having fun?
When they're not having fun. So that is a perfect segue. I love how you did that. We're going to talk about the conversation I had with a mom on the sidelines at lacrosse. And it was, I don't even know how it got started, but she basically was saying I think he was going into ninth grade. She's like, he struggles. And I probably at one point, I tell everyone I'm dyslexic.
Yeah, you have a sign in your head.
I know, really. So it came out somewhere. And we started talking and she's like, I really think he's dyslexic. I know he's ADHD. And she started going through these different things. And I said to her, well, did you get him tested? She's like, we got him tested for ADHD. He definitely is that. And I said, well, you need to do the whole neuropsych.
Ask a question. Did she know what dyslexia is?
Yes.
Did she say? Okay.
She knew, but not like.
That was my point. Yeah.
Yeah. I think she definitely knew. She's like educated on it, but again, is not super, super familiar. She was more familiar with ADHD because, her child was diagnosed with it. So when we started really talking about it and she was like, okay, well, that's what I keep telling the school, I really think he's dyslexic. I really think he's dyslexic. And I was like, okay. So I knew it was going to be a long conversation. Mm-hmm. So as we're continuing talking, I was like, you have to get that neuropsych, just get it done. And she was like, oh my God, I'm the worst parent. I can't believe I waited this long. I was like, we all do it. I'm like, trust me. I even, when Montgomery was in third grade, even though I knew we had a long line of dyslexia, like he should have been done earlier, but no, it doesn't. It is what it is. He's learned skills. He seems like a pretty kind of fun, dynamic kid, gets out of stuff, is more like a little goofy, but not like completely withdrawn. So it hasn't killed him yet, basically. So I said to her, well, what is the school saying? She's like, well, when we did the testing in school, he came back and he had a low IQ. And I literally, if I could have jumped out of the car and started screaming and curse words, I was like, okay. I said, so Mary, I said, can you just remind me? I said, you and your husband. And I said, I'm not asking this for any other reason. I said, what are your professions? And she said, we own our own IT company. We're entrepreneurs. And I said, okay, you both do. And she said, yes. I said, do you know if you have a line of dyslexia? And she said, no, but you know what? My husband is from Ireland. He's like right off the boat. I think we're probably all ADHD and da-da-da. And I said, so when they told you low IQ, she's like, well, I just kind of was like, oh, maybe he is. And I said, okay, but does he seem like he's low IQ? And she's like, no, he's like totally with it. He gets out of everything, this and that. And I said, right. I said, here's an example. I said, when you have to take an IQ test, and there's going to be people listening to this that are going to completely disagree with me, and that is fine. You can have your own opinion, but I totally believe this. When you are at a certain age and you're taking an IQ test and you've been like kicked in the pants all the time because you suck at taking tests, you're slow at reading, you're this and that, you're not going to score super well on an IQ test. Now there's people that have said, well, no, that doesn't take the same sort of brain and and like, I don't, that's horseshit. I'm sorry. When yeah, exactly. And I still, when someone says a test, I still literally get like anxiety. I have to like calm myself down. I fucking hate tests. Like
I broke out of the drivers when I had to go for my rewrite my test like 10 years ago. My son's like, dude, what happened? Like, yeah,
it is bad. It never kind of leaves you, and it is bad. So she was like, oh my gosh. And I said, you need to get him outside tested. I said, I'm sorry, unless he had, and then I did ask. So for all of you that are questioning me, I did ask, I said, did you have some sort of trouble at birth? Right. Did he have, was there any birth defects? Did he like lose oxygen? Right. I think we all have been dropped on the head or dropped a child on the head. Right. So, anything that was, and she's like, no. Well, why do you ask that? And I said, well, because I'm sorry, if you have two intelligent parents, and again, I'm going to have scientists that are like, no, there could be whatever, someone with low IQ. If you have two intelligent parents, entrepreneurs, this and that, most likely, unless something happened, unless there was a trauma to him, he does not have low IQ. And so the school is looking at it, and I'm not blaming the school because they're looking at the test, they're looking at the data, but what pisses me off is when you see the kid, she's like, oh my God, he gets out of everything. It's like insane. Like his friends are always like, how did you get that? And he's like, oh, I did this. I swindled this. And I'm like, if he was low IQ, he wouldn't have the wits to be able to get out of everything that he's getting out and succeed the way he's doing. So that's why it is so important to get the neuropsych outside. Yeah. Do not take the school's word. If you're sitting there, because I've been in the same boat where it was like, oh, well, wait a second. I don't want to put the pressure on a kid because maybe he's not that smart. And I'm, or maybe like if I'm talking to parents and they say that, but then all of a sudden it's like, you don't put the pressure because of this one stupid test. And then when you really think about it, it's like, no, it's a test taking thing. It's the anxiety of, oh my God, I have to take a test. And people don't realize when you have test anxiety, and I know anxiety, like, some people are like, oh, whatever. When you have test anxiety, it doesn't matter how much you know, whether you're ADHD, dyslexia, they've done studies on the brain. When you tell an attention deficit person, like, okay, ready, go, their brain shuts off. Like it literally goes gray. And you need like that kick to get started. So if you have test anxiety, you're literally just going through it. You're not even thinking and comprehending what you're doing.
No, test anxiety, we struggle with reading. What the fuck's on the whole test? Reading.
Well, they could say, okay, it's read to you, but still, it's
still right. You got to process it. I don't think I ever took an IQ test because they just thought I was dumb, But this loops us back to his strengths and weaknesses. Mm-hmm. People don't see it, right? They don't understand it. Mm-hmm. Like myself, I always go in the side door. Not the front, the back. People are like, So I'm in there before they even know. In this conversation, or I tell people I can almost read minds with the things that are said and how to say. So. Those are obviously those are all strengths, but for the kid, you can get around, and there's more to that you'll be able to break down. There's your strengths, and nobody knew that, nobody understood that, nobody knew, So, that neuropsych test is, better than breast milk. That thing is. You need that. You don't. The school's a business.
Yeah. Right.
It's a business, and teachers, not teachers, whatever. It's a business. You don't care.
And they're not going to say, oh, wait a second, I don't think he's got a low IQ. Let's try to get him services because maybe it is this. You'll get, and again, if you're a teacher out there that's like, nope, I speak my mind, I do it. There are people that do it. We talked about this before. My mom was totally one that was like, would push the limits. Everyone hated when she was in meeting because they knew that she was going to call people out on their bullshit and she was going to help the kid because that was her main focus. But in the, a lot of times when people, everyone has their own stuff in their own lives and they're doing, it is not the easiest thing. So again, we're not bashing it there, but for parents, it is really important to be the advocate for your child in that way.
It's, I've had enough surgeries, me as a doctor, I've got my doctorate and, hard knocks, you go to a doctor for a second or third opinion, right? You heard it, you're working at a union, you never trust a union doctor. So why are you going to trust the school? Those references, but that neuropsych is the one that tests for everything. The school doesn't. They only test for certain things. They're only going to test for things that they want to test for. So, like cancer, you want to find out you got, at stage 1, not stage 4. Same with all this, what is it? ADHD, autism, goes on and on. It tests for everything. So now we have an understanding of what we're dealing with. Do we need to take left? Do we need to take right? Before you're walking through the forest blindly, now you're not.
Right. And again, there's going to be parents right now that are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I haven't done it. Don't beat yourself up.
No.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And it's never too late. And the things that we have learned, I mean, we talk about this, like, you know, I, as a kid, was the chatty one, right? So teachers be like, oh, you talk too much. That's the other reason why you're not learning, because you're always talking and stuff. However, I was talking to get out of things and try to figure out how I didn't have to do the work in front of me, which now is a complete gift of mine. I know how to read people. I can hear the tones. I can see their body language. I know how to read people so well because I tried to get out of everything in school. So my weakness as a kid became my strength as an adult. And it is a huge thing. And it's got me really far in life because of that, because I know how to kind of do that. So when you're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I've waited too long or done these things, you know, it's never too late to kind of make a change. And so that's something, but it doesn't matter how old you are.
Whenever it is, you know, obviously we always can say sooner is better, you know, there, you know, 20/20 visions for a reason, crystal ball, you know, I was 32. Now, if you can catch a kid at any point in time in school, their scars are going to be less than mine.
Right.
You know, so straightforward, whatever it is, it doesn't, everything, you know, people ask this all the time. Brent, what do you tell your younger self? You know, and I watch these people and I tell myself this. No, nothing. I've had to go through all this stuff to get here, to be here today. You know, we all have pain. We all have trauma. We all have scars. Nobody's white picket fence, desperate housewives. You know, but if you can, for your kid, you know, if you can catch it, whenever you catch it, you know, look, I almost won 32. I went 32 years. If it wasn't for my daughter, I wouldn't know it. I'd think I'm stupid. So again, now I know that I'm not stupid. So that, you know, just, you know, that changed that. So it doesn't matter when, you know, we can all, what if? I can play what if I did that. What if I did? Yeah, we can play the goddamn what if game, you know, women all the time. But
no, not women, reality. My kids, what if? And I would always say, I'm not playing any what if games. Like, what if this happened? Mom, what if we got lost in the woods? And you know, like, what if, I guess, what if
Christopher Columbus founded the land? How do you know? Nobody was there. You didn't write it down. What do you mean there's pen and paper? We kept it in the safe? No. That was the bull. That history garbage. Nobody's there for it. Oh, no. In 1400, you don't know. It's so full of garbage. You weren't there.
No, but the what if, but it is so true. What if is the death of things. And again, it takes, again, doing the hard work, but also being there as an advocate for your kid. And if you're an adult listening and being like, you know, like yourself, you were older. I mean, I was in college really, but then, you know, but again, we knew early, like my parents.
And that was the benefit of your mom. And, you know, your mom's obviously, she was obviously, she's a, you know, a teacher, so she understood all that stuff, you know, more than, you know, somebody who's a nurse or whatever.
Oh, it's huge. Totally.
You know, obviously you're born cocky, but she made you cocky because she was able to boost those things.
Well, it was my older sister. My older sister also, and my older sister was not cocky. My older sister had self-esteem stuff for many, many years. So my mom, I think, went in and did the complete opposite. So then it was like, oh, I'm fantastic. Oh, I failed that test. That stupid teacher. She didn't teach me. My mom was like, oh, okay. Did you study? Well, no, because she didn't teach me. You know, I mean, whatever. We could go on and on about it, but it is, right. And I don't do that. I don't blame others for my weaknesses. But when I was a kid, that's what I did because it got me through, you know, whatever.
In school right now.
I totally been in school. Yeah. I do that kind of stuff. That is true. Thank you for pointing that out and calling me out.
And that's, you know, again, that, you know, that's your past trauma. That's your defense mechanisms. You know, these are little things that add up, you know, I obviously, you know, bug you about it, but it's people don't recognize them. It's, you know, like somebody who works, you know, go, have a million friends. Okay. You know, that's not healthy, you know, eat it. So it just doesn't have to be drugs and alcohol like I did and how amazing they were. There's other, you know, there's workaholics, you know, where they work so hard, so long that they just pass out while they don't process, they don't go back, you know, to pass, you know, go through their trauma. So, or eating, you know, so there's a lot of different ways, to
people numb and hide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that a lot of people don't recognize, but it's, there's many different ways of doing it.
There are. Well, I think on that note, this was awesome. And I love, again, how we come up with different things. I know there's going to be some other episodes. I think you promised that you're going to do some fan mail one of these times.
See, the mailmen, aren't they on strike?
Yes, right. So you have to kind of dig.
Mail's not coming in, I guess.
Yeah, you got to go dig into the archives. And then we're also going to talk about, again, different experiences, which were really, again, you can hear Brent and I, we get super passionate about this because it is so important. And, people have conversations. We've talked about this. Autism is way more known. But it's 1 in 65, where dyslexia is 1 in 5, and it's hereditary. Like, so if you have it in your family, and one of my favorite things to do, and this is one of my questions, is when someone has, remember I said to you and you're like, I don't know. And I was like, well, come on, you got to think.
And that was funny when you're talking about the kid, on the team, you're talking about their IT people. I'm like, and that's, a quick topic is, it's an interesting too, Irish, right? Hard nosed, don't acknowledge it. Some of the first generation European don't have it. So, there's that.
I said, I think your husband's dyslexic. She's like, do you think? And I was like, well, I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
But right. There are definitely, there's those kind of things, but it is hereditary. And so it is sometimes for me, because I love the questions, it's fascinating to kind of go down the lineage. Now it stopped at my dad. We think it was my grandmother, my dad's mom. But again, you don't know the,
I don't care.
You see, I love that. I know you don't care. I think it's
going on. I got enough in my life. Grandma who died 35 years ago, she had it. I don't care. I
think that's fascinating. I do care, and I don't know if that's a woman.
We do great.
I don't know if that's a woman thing or just a thing. So maybe you can call in, ask whatever. Not calling because we don't have that, but like email if you think it's a woman or a man thing. But I think it is. No, I think I'm just super curious.
Some people want like history. I think history doesn't exist. People on aliens, I don't give a shit. People are planning 6 months out. I'm like, all right, I might die tonight. So everybody, oh, you're morbid. That's the truth. It might have, so, I just, everybody looks at it different ways. I just don't.
Right. I just don't. Maybe it's because you're Canadian. I'm going to blame it on that. I'm kidding.
It's because I wrote that short.
I got an eye roll. Well, whatever it is. That's what it is. All the times that you got hit in the head. But guys, thank you again for joining Word Blindness with myself and Brent Sopel. And we will see you guys for another episode. Don't forget to like, rate, review, and share. You might have listened to this episode and been like, oh, it's fun. They had enjoyable conversations, but you don't know who in your life needs to hear this. You don't know who actually is struggling. You don't know who in your family or, extended family, friends could actually have dyslexia or a different learning disability and going through this because they're not talking about it because they don't know where to talk about it. They're embarrassed, and just sending this out, you're going to touch someone's life. So don't forget to rate, review, and share.